episode 2 of Christ and Culture. We will be talking about a few things. We will talk about salvation and the cost of being a Christian. And I hope you enjoyed today's podcast. I'm going to go ahead and pass it to Mike.
Oh, yeah, let's talk about salvation. What's your salvation story?
Okay. My
Well, wait. What's salvation when we talk about it?
Well, salvation is basically, my point is basically when I got saved, of course, Jesus Christ. When I gave my life to Jesus Christ, yeah, when I gave my life to Jesus Christ, of course, came to my life, basically, I'm sure that a lot of people heard of preaching of some sort, and well, that's when repent a little bit about what the gospel is, and well, from there I gave my life to Jesus years ago. I was a kid.
What does that mean?
When I was a kid.
What does it mean?
What do you mean?
You gave your life.
Okay, I accepted Christ into my life there. I accepted Christ into my life, and from there it's just been a journey.
You said you were a kid. How old were you?
I was around like 10, I believe, 10 years old.
Did you know what you were doing, or did you just do it because everyone else was?
No. Actually, it was more like a inner like feeling, like saying like, hey, like I was hearing the preacher preach about the gospel, and at that time, and I was just there like, wow, like I've done so many mistakes, and I was surprised too. I was like, whoa, like man, I'm been doing a lot of bad things. I need to give up my life to Christ.
It just sounds funny, like a 10-year-old, like
yeah,
you're a criminal.
Yeah, like. And I guess, like, I don't know, like, you just have that understanding, like, wow, like, like, Jesus is real, and, well, like, I have to, live a better life. So
you understood that till you were 10?
Around that, yeah.
That Jesus was real?
No. Well, yes, but, yes, and, well, I had to give my life to Christ, and I have to repent from the life I was having,
Yeah, so, yeah. I was, like, around that age, too, when I quote unquote became saved, but I don't know if I knew what I was doing.
I definitely didn't know. I was 8, I think, when like officially like the first time that I accepted like Christ as my savior. I was 8, but looking back, I don't think I knew what that meant.
How did you feel?
I think I did it because everybody else was doing it.
Oh, okay.
I think I did it because
it was just something you did.
I was not going to hell.
Yes.
Oh, kind of like in the fearful way, like oh man.
Yeah, yes, because
I have to give my life away.
Yeah, because mine was at like a conference.
Okay.
Power lifters that would use Christian.
Power lifters? Oh yeah.
Wow. They're called the Power Team.
Okay.
And I don't know. I just remember going to a prayer circle and someone was praying with me, and I got saved, and I got a free little bat. It was like a little bat.
Okay.
And I thought it was cool. But I think I did it because it meant to be saved. Well, we were taught it's true, right? If you're saved, you don't go to hell. If you give your life to Jesus Christ, you don't go to hell. If you believe in Jesus Christ, that's the way to avoid hell. So I think that's kind of why I did it. And you had a totally, completely different experience than me, because I don't even remember like any of those thoughts.
Yeah.
When I went through that.
Okay. How about you?
No, I don't. Like, I remember it was a service. I remember that, but I don't remember me actively like thinking like, oh, I'm accepting Jesus because I'm a sinner, because I've done these bad things, because I was 8. Because realistically, like at 8.
Yeah, you're probably lying.
Yeah, those things, like they.
Maybe stealing if you're hanging around the wrong crowd in school. I don't know what else.
Oh man.
I mean, nowadays everything, all bets are off, right? Because everyone has cell phones and stuff. But or at least when I grew up, there was no cell phones.
Oh yeah, like like my family always told me that I was a rebellious kid, so I was like, no, yeah, like I think
I guess disobedience.
Yeah, being disobedience at school too, like just getting in trouble a lot, and just not doing the right thing with parents, I guess. That's what it came to. It came to me like
in your heart.
Yeah, like hey, I have to be obedient. I have to start listening. I have to do a change. Yeah. Oh yeah, it was a struggle, but after like accepting Christ in my my life, I was just like, wow, like this is not the right way to live. And as a kid, I started.
Sorry to cut you off, but
Yeah.
since you had a completely different experience, so you never like since that moment you never like I don't want to say backslid, but like had moments where you were bad again, I guess.
To a point. I mean, of course, teen years, we all be rebellious. Yes and no. Like, I guess where that kind of change was in school, like with the friends I started hanging out with, and I was like, okay, like I can't say some words, I can't act this way, and that's where I started seeing it like change with my friends in school. Like, of course, yes, with my parents and family, yeah, that's where I started seeing it as well, changing, but mostly shifting with my friends, out of home,
Yeah, because I think for a lot of Christians, especially us that are older, that were saved or quote unquote saved when they were preteens, there's a point where they have their salvation day, and then the point where they get serious about God.
Yeah.
So, like for me, so I was quote unquote saved at like the age of 10, and then I was serious about God in my teen years, and then I wasn't, and then I got serious again for the final time in my 20s.
Okay.
So like that was my experience. Like, so did you ever have any of those like you could say like drought years in your life where you say like not that you had to like give your life to Christ, but you had to like devote your life to God?
No, I don't think so, because ever since then, like in the church I grew up, it was just an environment where when I was young, it just like popped out, and I just having this journey. I got closer to people at church, and they helped me as the youngsters, and they teach us new stuff. And well, from there on, I just kept feeling it kept building up. Of course, yeah, we all have those moments where we fall, and we had to pick ourselves up. But like you mentioned, like that, no, I don't think so.
So you were serious, like in your relationship since you were 10?
10 going up, like 10, 12, like around there, I started learning more stuff.
Because like for me, I got saved, I guess, at 8,
Uh-huh.
but my relationship with God didn't start till I was like 16, 17.
Okay.
But I was in church my whole life,
Yeah, same. Like I was in church the
But-
entire time too.
but I guess I didn't know or understand like the seriousness of it till I was
Yeah.
16, 17.
Oh yeah, like of course, like I guess I could say like I would pray a lot when I was really young. I mean, it happens, in my life, like when I was really, really young, I just started praying, read the Bible a lot. Just, it just came to me. Yeah, like, the Holy Spirit just,
So
Never.
when was the first time that you felt the Holy Spirit?
oof, I don't remember that. That's a while back.
It was like when you were younger too?
I don't know, I can't recall that. No, I was really young, like probably like a kid.
Yeah. So since you're a little bit different, right, than us, I guess for you it would be like, when did your relationship with God mature to a point where
Like it was
things in your life,
Yeah.
you had a conscience, understanding that you needed to change things in your life?
It's difficult.
Because for me, like, that part didn't happen until like probably my 20s or late teens, where I realized that I had to tangibly change things if I wanted to get a mature relationship with God.
I was young. I was super young, and honestly, I can't really recall that. Like I'm telling you, it happened around those ages. Like, I prayed consistently, and like I just kept praying, and just
But-
had that,
Sorry. But like when was the first time, or like it was since you were that young that your
Yeah, I was-
relationship with God started?
yeah. Like for me, that's how it started. I kept praying. I had, like I'm just saying, like reading the Bible, prayer, and just being around that people, like help my relationship with God grow. As a youngster.
Yeah, I think that a part of that is like you had a good foundation at your
Yes,
church or
in the
your local church,
Mm-hmm.
which is good and rare nowadays, because I I mean, it's hard to find mentors.
No, yeah. In my church, we had a lot of teachers, and that's what really helped me as a teen, like grow and grow and grow. I was always with 3 different type of teachers, whether we go to evangelists and missionaries and stuff like that. I will always ask them questions, and that's where, like my understanding grew and grew.
Yeah, I think a big part of it is like who you hang around with.
Yes.
I hang around with all church people, but there's a lot of people that were just like me, like that same, like they were in church, but they weren't in church. Like they were just there because of their parents or like because it was a social event or just things like that. And then it really didn't hit me that I needed a relationship with God until like my life was like, I didn't like my life. Right. That's why I turned to more a deeper connection with God. Cause I grew up in church, but it was more of a tradition, like something to do on Sunday, something to do on Wednesday, a social club in a way.
Yeah.
And for me, that was when I was like, okay, I need this relationship to mature quickly. Because not only did I felt I was living a purposeless life, but I felt like I had a calling, but I never knew how that connection was going to be made.
Yeah.
Without maturing my relationship with God.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me that happened. My mom asked me, like, when I was 16, 17, I think 16. I don't know, like, why she asked me that, but she was like, "Do you want to serve God?" Because, I mean, it was like for me, it wasn't even a question, right? It was like just something that I did since I was born, like always in church, always. Just like you said, like going to church on Sundays, going to church on Thursdays, like just being there. So like the idea of not going to church or not being a Christian had never crossed my mind until she asked me. She was like, "Do you even do you understand what's going on, or do you understand like that you're gonna be in this for the rest of your life?" And that was when I guess thought of like, oh, if I want to be a Christian, if I want to do this, like, I need to do it seriously. It's not just like, oh, I'm just gonna go to church another day.
Yeah, I think there's a point like if you grew up in church at least, that there's a point like between your like 15 years of age to like 18 or 20 when you have to realize, okay, this is something I'm gonna pursue for the rest of my life or something I'm not. Because when I think about it, like people that leave the church. The majority of the people that leave the church are the people that grew up in church because they just decided that they weren't going to do it anymore.
Yeah.
Which is sad, but it's a plague of, this superficial Christianity that we all suffered from. Well, not Minor, right? Minor was the perfect Christian. I'm just...
No. I was.
But he had a good support system, right? And not to say that we didn't, but we faltered in some sort of
Yes.
we didn't. I think there's a point where we all get to that age where we have to decide, and then it comes with that decision comes with something where it's costing us something else, right? Because with every decision we make, there's a marginal cost. Right. So if you decide to go to school, your marginal cost is you lose time or you can't work, for example. Right. This is something I learned in business school. So I am right. So that degree is worthwhile. Right. It's called marginal cost. Right. This is a college term. But you give up something to pursue something. Right. So I said you get a job, you can't go to school, or you go to school, you can't get a job, or full time. Right. You go to school. Worker, if you're a full-time worker, you can't be a full-time student. If you are, that's amazing, but more likely you can't. And for Christianity, like if you pursue God wholeheartedly, there's something that you're giving up. So I want to talk about that a little bit. Like what have we given up, right? So what have you seen that you've given up throughout your life of not being a perfect Christian, but being fully devoted to God for the majority of your life?
Man, when I was in middle school, man, I used to love sports like crazy. And within those years, I was like, wow, I had to give that up, because I wanted to pursue in church and help a lot. So I give out sports, give out friends, like hanging out with them. A lot of things as well, like growing up as the years progressed, I could see that too. Like in high school or going to college, like I see that a lot. And you mentioned it too, like this past something you mentioned it, like we could be doing something else in the morning. We could be sleeping in. We could be, on a Wednesday night, just relaxing home, like not worrying about going to church or like, devoting yourself. And you could do something else. I could be playing video games. I love video games, I could be playing soccer too. I tell you, I love to do a bunch of activities, which I don't mind doing because I love, to serve and to do everything, like because the relationship I have with, with God. That's a lot of things that I give up.
Yeah.
You?
I don't know. It's going to be crazy, but I don't think I gave up anything because like I didn't know, or I haven't known a life without this in my life.
Yeah.
So I guess like what are like the things that I could give up are like drinking or partying. I've never done. So I haven't given them up because I don't know what it's like to do that. I guess like
Part of friends, like
probably friends, but it's just been more, it hasn't been like because I'm a Christian, I don't want to be a friend. It's just like different, what's the word? Like different interests make people grow apart. But I haven't lost people because I'm a Christian, if that makes sense. Like I haven't lost anything because I'm a Christian.
Yeah, I think like different lifestyles and people just grow
Yeah.
apart. But I know like, so like for like Maya was saying for this, like cost hits differently for everyone. You since like y'all are in the worship team, like it may not like be surface level, but there are costs to being in the worship team, right? So there's the constant criticism that comes with it, right? Like
Yes.
like let's just be honest. If you're in the pulpit or you're in the altar, you're gonna be criticized. Even if you're perfect, right? Jesus was criticized. Never said anything wrong, right, per se. Like he was speaking the gospel and he was still criticized. So like why is that worth it? Like why is it worth the criticism? If someone would ask you like what's the point of doing that if all you're gonna do is just get criticized no matter what you do?
Well, that is, I would say I have experienced a lot of criticism and a lot of pain being in a worship team. But looking back, I think I would do it all over again just because I know how it has strengthened my relationship with God and other people's relationship with God. Not because of me, but seeing what God can do in somebody's life, even like through pain, even through problems that come. I just like we are the people who help bring other people into God's presence. And I think that's like just something so beautiful, like how God is willing to use us to bring somebody else into his presence. Like even though we go through hardships like throughout the week, throughout the month or whatever, when we come on Sundays and we or even to practice, right? Like when we come and we unite us 5 every time we practice.
It's not funny. It's actually
every time we practice or every time we play, like, and we've said it before, like as a worship team, like every time that we come together, like we can forget about what's going on in our lives and just focus on what really matters, like worshiping God and just thanking him for everything that he's done.
Yeah, I bring this up, right? I don't want to get into your business because this is kind of like the cost. Because as a pastor, I'm like, man, the worship team gets criticized a lot. Like, not that I hear it, but like it's easy to see like how criticism works. Like in previous places we've been, I've been like witness there, been in meetings where they're like, well, why is the worship team not playing this? Why is it not playing that? Why are they like this? Why are they like that? And I'm like, man, I would not want to be part of worship. As a pastor, that probably gets criticized. But the good thing about the pastor is you always get criticized behind your back. Unless you're Mike Todd or like this big pastor, right? You always get criticized behind your back.
Oh, man.
So you don't really hear it, right? And then the times
So you don't know.
the times you do hear it, you're like, oh, like that hurts, right? But oh well, right? It happens. But because these are the costs that we all make, right? We are lending ourselves as vessels for God and opening ourselves to criticism, opening ourselves to offense, opening ourselves to whatever. And I just think that it's interesting to get your point of view on this, because you may not see it as something you're giving up or opening yourselves to that, but it's something that is very evident, at least
For criticism, to me, like already understanding like the love and the relationship I have with, as individuals we have with Christ, like criticisms, like to me, it's like something so small now. Like, yeah, we do fall like everybody else, and when I do fall, like I, at the end of the day, know that I have someone who loves me, someone who's going to like be patient with me. Of course, I have to come to understanding what I did, and just bring it up to him and say like, hey, I messed up. But at the same time, like I already know like deep in that like I have this relationship that he's shown me so much that don't care about what they say, care about what I have to say about you. And that really just fortified me, saying like, man, I don't care what people are going to tell me anymore. Just like what God said in the Bible, that people are going to hate you, people are going to do that. They did it to Jesus, and of course I've experienced that too, but again, it's the relationship I had with Christ. Well,
But that knowledge and that like understanding comes after the pain.
Yeah.
Comes after you've
After
already
you go through
experienced.
it.
Yeah.
It's kind of like your faith doesn't grow until you go through a problem, or your faith doesn't grow until God doesn't answer.
Because I would say like at this point, like right now where I'm at and seeing everything that I've experienced, I don't care anymore. Like what somebody criticizes about me. But it's because I've already gone through the worst that I can go through.
I guess I didn't like you mentioned, I've gone through stuff too, but I just never really cared about it. Like in my life, I never really cared about it, like because people could talk, and to me, like I never really prioritized that in my life. Like yeah, like I have some. Other than that, I remember telling you a story that, well, my ex-pastor told me. That did kind of like affect me, but criticism from other people towards me, like I guess
I mean, that's
didn't
different.
really
Right?
affect
We're
me
talking about
at all.
criticism because sometimes it's something that you may not do wrong, but
Yeah,
it wasn't to a person's liking, and they just criticize. For example, at least off the top of my head, I don't think. I mean, I don't know, maybe. I think a couple times I'm like, I shouldn't have said it like that. But are there people that took it the wrong way? I'm pretty sure. Like, probably has to be. I've preached. Have I got into the hundreds yet? I don't even know. Like, I've been the pastor for 2 years.
I'm sure.
Maybe
yes.
into the hundreds, where I've probably said stuff wrong.
How
Like,
many Sundays?
how many Sundays? 50
In a year?
52 minus a
Maybe
few.
you're
Come on.
Yeah, I think I'm over 100.
Yes, come on.
Yeah.
now.
So like, and I like what you said about going through that difficult part. I'm scared because I have not gone through that as a pastor yet. I've had to deal with issues that people have had with me, which ended up being just most of the time miscommunication. But I've never had a point where someone is like, I don't know what people say to criticize pastors, like I don't know. But I haven't had that point where I feel like I don't want to go back to the pulpit, or I don't want to go back to the stage, or I don't want to grab the microphone again, or I don't want to grab the guitar again, or I don't know if I want to do this again. And that kind of
I've
scares
gone through that. But I don't know. Like I feel like I came to a point where it was like, oh, I mean, people are gonna say what they're gonna say regardless. Like
Yeah.
if you do something good, they're gonna say something bad about it. So like
yeah, I just think it's a very like real thing that a lot of people don't talk about, because they see people that are on the stage, leading worship, preaching, and they're like, they have everything all put together, but don't. Like,
No.
there are times where, you know, we not arguing, but like going through a difficult time before we step into on the stage, and we just have to do our best to allow God to use it, right? It goes to the saying that God still uses broken people, right? And that's something that we see. And it's not just in the bad way where a pastor's cheating on his wife, but is still preaching an awesome sermon, or a pastor abuses his leadership team and then still comes on Sunday and is one of the most impressive speakers of the word. But it could also go like, our worship leader is heartbroken, but she's still leading amazing. Or our pastor is so hurt by his congregation, but it's still his duty to come up and lead his sheep. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't, maybe they understand, but they don't really see, right? Out of sight, out of mind. And it's something that I felt it was important to discuss, because as I said this past Sunday, like, I'm thankful for all the leaders that we have, right? We may not have many, but those that are in leadership or have opened themselves to leadership, it comes at a cost, right? Like, small costs, right? Our worship team shows up at 8:30, right? A lot of people, they're like, yeah, I want to join the worship team. Oh, you have to be here at 8:30 on Sunday. We start service at 10:30. Like, never mind, right? I'll be on the greeting team, right? And it's just like small things like we may not view. I mean, we grew up in church all our lives. That may seem like nothing. There were times when we were having pre-meetings in our old church. We would meet for breakfast, and then we would have a pre-church meeting, and then they would have run-throughs, and then we would have our service, right? So for us, it's nothing, right? Yeah. But it's just these small costs that we view as nothing that someone from the outside views us. Man, you do all that for nothing, for no paycheck.
For an hour.
Yeah, for an hour, for 2 hours, right? And it's just goes to show, like, that's how deep a relationship we have with God, right? Because if it wasn't real, we wouldn't do it. Yeah. If we didn't feel it real, we would eventually flame out and we just stop doing it or stop trying. And that's kind of what we see, right? And something that we don't really understand is what it takes to be behind the scenes. And one more thing here that I want to talk about is when we first started planting the church, the difficulties of that. Because even though we're not ever going to be remembered, right, probably as the main church planters, right? So it's going to be Pastor Kevin and Nikki, but like we were like right there right beside them, right, for the most part. So like, what's the cost of church planting? Like a lot of people don't understand, but I mean, maybe you don't know much, but there was difficulties behind that. So I don't know if you want to share on that. And Minor he wasn't with us, but he was with us a few months.
A few months.
Yeah. So he could also speak to this.
What I could say, probably not with Grace Life, but we with a separate church, it was a group of us. We decided to start our own church. We started at a restaurant, and it was outside and just in the restaurant, just the porch, and it was tough. It was tough because we had to put all the equipment up, and it was just 3 families, and little by little people would start showing up. Yeah, but oh man, the difficulties we had, the weather. We didn't know when it was gonna rain. Like the forecast would say something else.
I was gonna say, you didn't look at the forecast?
No, yeah, like it was weird because the forecast would say one thing. I don't know.
This was in Delaware?
No, that was here in Texas. Yeah, it was here in Texas, and that was tough. It was tough not having a church, not having a building, and we're like people would just pass by. God would, people would just donate, but it was tough because it was just a small family, a small group of us, and we're doing it in a place where they allowed us to, be there, set everything up, and like it was really, really tough, but it was a good experience because that's what you take in, you value it. So those moments with those people, you're like, wow, like keep on pressing forward, and it's just beautiful because like when you're surrounded with those people who want to do something for God, like there's nothing that's gonna stop you. not even the weather, not even nothing. And that's what I take,
Yeah.
from my experience. Yeah.
I remember, like when we were starting Grace Life, it was very exciting. Like the idea of, oh, we're gonna start something that nobody has ever, like, obviously people have started churches,
Yeah.
but I mean, like, we're starting like something from scratch.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing, there's no one that has touched this except for us. But it did, like, I would say maybe like a few months in, it felt like, are we, like, is this serious? Like, are we really doing this? Because sometimes I feel like it felt like we were, I don't want to say like playing church, but kind of like that, like it's so small. Like,
Yeah,
are we
'cause-
really gonna grow?
Yeah. I think the excitement happens in the beginning, and then the honeymoon phase ends,
Yeah.
and then you're left with all the work,
Yeah.
and you're like, oh, like we have to actually do this.
Mm.
Yeah, and like I guess like that the cost of it was like we just had to wait, like,
Patience.
for people to come. We had to wait, like, for us to grow. It was a lot of waiting
Mhm.
for like things to happen. But now looking back, it's like, oh, like the wait has been worth it. I know we still have to wait more, like, for bigger things to happen for Grace Life, but like for now, the what we've given up, or the cost that it has, the price that we've paid has been worth it.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember like that feeling as well. After the first few months, right? You're excited about an idea, you're excited about naming a place or naming a ministry, you're excited about just a fresh start overall, right? Because we were all coming from difficult situations before, and just something where we could do it and no one was going to tell us no, right? Or the pastor, right?
Yes.
No one was going to tell him no, right? And then that excitement ends, and then you're like, okay, like this is work, right? Like building a church is not easy. Planting a church is not easy. Building a ministry of any kind is not easy, especially when you're building it from scratch, from ground zero, and you have to literally like go get people, create preaching, create a whole foundation to a church, to a ministry. And it's something that a lot of people just overlook it in a way, but not overlook, it's not the right word, just like, and they miss the point of what it is. Because it's like anyone that has run a small business understands that. I was talking to someone that has a small business, and they're like, well, I kind of have like a small business too. Like we're building a church, and we've been building it since, we had 0 people coming, right? Other than the families that had decided to follow us. And it's been hard, right? Because obviously there are those very special ministries that grow instantly,
Yeah.
right? They grow from 0 to hundreds in a year, or 0 to thousands in a couple years, right? But then there's also those ministries where it takes 10, 15 years for them to finally break through into what God is calling them to do.
Yeah.
And are you willing to be patient enough to see the fruits of that? And that's not easy. So that was something that, we all saw, or right, that we talked about. I think another thing is that knowing who is willing to do the work with you is another thing, right? Because everyone is willing to show up on a Sunday, but how many are showing up on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday, right? And not saying physically, but like, how many of us are actually like praying for the ministry on Monday and Tuesday?
Mhm.
How many of us are preparing or cultivating our craft on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, right?
Yeah.
How many of us are willing to show up for practice on a Thursday, willing to show up for a prayer meeting on Wednesday, show up for a regular meeting about the future on Friday, or willing to give their time on a Saturday?
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And I think the key to church planting, or the church sprouting or building or exploding, is not necessarily the pastor, it's everyone around the pastor. right? And maybe you completely disagree with me, but I believe that a pastor is only as successful, or a church is only as successful as its foundational leaders. And I think that's something that I've come to understand, that
Yeah.
if we don't have a strong support system, or if any business doesn't have a strong support system, it's gonna falter, or
Yeah.
it's gonna take longer than it's supposed to blossom.
Yeah.
And I think the cost of being willing to do that is not easy for a random person to say, yeah, I believe in your vision, Pastor, and I'm gonna do whatever it takes. But if we're not willing to do that as Christians, then what is the point of being a Christian, right? And I'm kind of like flowing preaching right now, right? So,
But I think it's hard for people to come to that realization without being like inside the ministry. Because like you said, like it's, or like we've talked about, right? Like it's a lot of sacrifice, or it's a lot of pain, it's a lot of cost, that even like, I don't know, being in the greeting team, like that can come with a lot of sacrifice and a lot of criticism as well. But if you're not part of that, if you're just somebody who goes to church on a Sunday, comes in late, leaves early, right? Like you don't know what that feels like, or what the sacrifice is. So I think it's like it's our job as leaders to involve people in that. Obviously, we don't want people to go through pain, right, or through criticism, but just involving people into the good parts of the ministry, right? Like the camaraderie that we have, or like the unity that comes with that. Obviously, like the bad parts are always gonna still be there, but I think when you come to that understanding, that realization of like, oh, this is what it actually takes to put on this 2-hour service, then that's when like we'll grow as a church and as Christians in our life.
yeah, I think something that is important that a lot of people don't know is like, you're like, well, why am I going to go? I'm not going to do anything. I don't know how to do anything. Like, there's value in just showing up. Like, there's value in just being early. There's value in just like being in as a support extension for a pastor, for another leader. There was value in John the Beloved just being at the cross, even though he couldn't do nothing for Jesus.
Yeah.
Like, he was just there, right? And there's value in that. And a lot of people think that if I'm not doing nothing, then I hold no value, and that's false. And I think that we just have to get to a point as Christians, in not necessarily our church, but just in America, like that. This past Sunday, we read the parable of when Jesus, 2 Sundays ago, we went through the young rich man. And then this Sunday, we went through about when Jesus was talking about that his followers, that if they weren't willing to go all in, then don't follow me at all.
Yeah.
And it's just crazy to believe that that is true, right? If we're not willing to sacrifice anything, then what is the point in believing in God?
Yeah.
Like, and I think that is something that we have to understand, as if we want to claim Christianity, we have to claim the burden too, right? We can't get the blessing without the burden. We can't feel we deserve the promises without the cross. We can't feel we deserve the resurrection power without being nailed first, right? And I think that's something that's lost in our current culture of Christianity, where we want the good stuff, but we don't want any of the bad stuff. And I don't know, that this is just something that has been in my heart recently. I mean, we're going through a sermon series talking about Beyond the Parables, and this has just been so heavy that we cannot follow Jesus unless we first calculate the cost of following Jesus. We can't join a worship team if we're not willing to endure the cost of being a worship leader, right? I can't come up on Sunday without the possibility that I'm going to be torn down for what I say, right? If we truly believe God is moving me to do something, we have to understand the cost to it. And there's always a cost to it. And that's just something that I feel so strongly about, that we need to understand that Christianity is not a social club.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a fad. It's not any of that, right? Sometimes we view it as that. But true Christianity is giving up our life, our desires, our aspirations, our dreams, our goals, our preferences for those of God for us.
Yeah.
And if we're not willing to do that, then we don't want to be Christians, right? It's that plain and simple, right? Christianity is not for everyone, right? It's offered to everyone, but it's honestly and unfortunately, not everyone's going to choose it. And I'm thankful that we, like y'all, have chose it, right? At any minute you could say, okay, I'm out, right? Right? And I mean,
Yeah.
that would be sad, but just like at any minute, any of the disciples, well, one of them did, right, said, I'm out, but like they could say they're out. And that's just something that I think is important. That as Christians, as believers of the gospel, as spreaders of the gospel,
Yeah.
that we must spread the true gospel,
Yeah.
and not a watered down, filtered one that is being spread today. And I don't know, that's just something that was on my mind about the cost.
I think
Yes.
that when, like, I don't know, I've never had the thought of leaving, right? But I think that when people have that idea of like, I'm just leaving this all behind, it's because they've been hurt so much by people that they think that they've been hurt by God. But I think when we come to that realization of like, when I'm joining this new path, right, Christianity, I'm going to get hurt, but the people that are going to hurt me, or what's going to hurt me, isn't God, isn't my relationship with God. It's the obstacles that are coming my way that I just have to overcome. And at the end of it all, like when it's just one-on-one with God, there's no pain, there's no hurt. It's just love. And I just think that it's not easy for people to get that, because they might have been already hurt by the church, or just the idea of like, oh, I don't want to start this new chapter and then fall into pain. But if you put that in a balance of like the pain that you go through and then the love of Christ, like I think it just overwhelms, like it overcasts the pain and the suffering.
Yeah, like the cost of being a Christian is great. Absolutely. Like we could sit down, like, and talk. I could talk like more like detailed and what some costs could be, but the cost of choosing not to believe is even greater, right?
Yeah.
And that's just for me something that I not get frustrated with, but something I'm still trying to work with is people say they want to be a Christian, but they don't really understand what it is to be a Christian, because it's not easy. And it's not easy, but it's worth it.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
It's totally worth it.
And maybe, you don't get your riches, you don't get your
Your dreams,
but
what you wanted.
the great thing about this is like your when you give your dreams to God, your dreams change,
Yeah.
right? When you were 8, I don't know, what did you want to do when you were 8 years old? Do you remember?
No, yeah. Like when I was a kid, like what I wanted to do, because my dad was a real soccer player. He was a pro.
Wait.
He wasn't a pro, but like he was like a good. He always talked about soccer. So
Oh, like your dad was a
no,
football player?
No, not a pro, but like he was talented.
good, yeah.
He was really, very talented, and he will always direct me to that direction. Either if it was soccer, or it was being someone in music, or just being someone like a doctor or something. Like, because my mom always gave me those thoughts. It was just living my own life, how I wanted to. I've really never had any other thoughts than that. But aside from that, like understanding what God wanted in my life, like it just brought me joy to experience that with Him as well. Because
Yeah,
it's that joy that brings to you, like you're like, wow, like I thought about this way. Now I think about living this life with you. Like it just brings you like an outstanding amount of joy.
Yeah, so when I was like 8, I probably wanted to be like a policeman or something. It's a fireman. That's what everyone wants to be, right? It's not popular anymore, right? But yeah, like now, like even from my 20s to now, like my thoughts have changed, my goals have changed, my aspirations have changed. Where I like, honestly, like my number one goal has nothing to do with me. Like my number one goal is to spread the gospel through Grace Life Church to as many people as we can, right? And like honestly, that's nothing really in the end for me, right? Like maybe my face gets in front of a few more people, but that's basically it, right? That's like my number one individual goal, right? That excludes family and stuff like that. Like that's my, I guess, professional goal in life. And you know, when you get closer, when your relationship with God grows, it's not that you forget or you throw away your dreams, it's that they change. Yeah. And God's purpose becomes your dream, or God's purpose in your life becomes your goals. And I think that's just an amazing thing that a lot of people don't understand when they're like, oh, I can't do this or that anymore. No, it's just that like things change.
Okay.
They align with God's purpose.
Yeah.
But yeah. I don't know anything.
But that's what it means to be a Christian.
Sacrifice.
Christianity sacrifice. But there's so many layers to it, right? And I'm pretty sure there are things where like, oh, you should have said this, should have said that. I mean, we have a lot of episodes to come through, but if there's any topic that you want us to talk about, I put it in the comments. Say it to us in person.
Let us know.
Right, let us know, because we want to discuss things that people want discussed, right?
Yeah.
And but yeah, episode 2.
Thank you.
Thank you. See you next episode.
Episode 3.